Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys about doing HIIT or any other type of cross-training that cross-trains energy systems immediately after your weight training without any sort of break, food, rest, naps, any things like that in between. I came across a study that I saw linked by Dr. Brad Schoenfeld this morning, and I read through it briefly just to get an idea of what's going on, and pretty much turned out exactly how I expected. I mean, it's pretty predictable what was going to happen. But I'll link the study down below for you guys. So let me get in my places in, put on my +5 cap of weaponsmithing, do a little crafting, and let's talk about this. Now, for a lot of people who say, we don't like these long videos, we don't like the long videos, well, I'm going to do them every day. But here's the cliff notes. Basically, don't ever do any sort of cross-training immediately after lifting if your goals are to gain muscle or gain strength at close to the highest rate possible. It should never be an option to do cardio or conditioning work or HIIT of any type immediately after you lift. You need food and preferably a nap in between. If you can't do that, it's probably a bad idea. For weight loss, fat loss, it isn't a bad idea. So it kind of depends on what your goals are right at the moment, but it will inhibit your strength gains and it will slightly inhibit your muscle gains. So if we look at the study, what is it that we found in the study? Well, basically they took a bunch of young men who were novice lifters, so they should be able to make fantastic gains. Fantastic gains. I mean, you can almost have novice lifters, especially healthy young men, breathe really hard or sneeze too many times and gain an ounce of muscle. That's how easy it is. It's literally so easy. You just put them under a squat bar. You can actually have them come in and squat once a week or deadlift once a week and go home. And novice lifters gain 3 or 4 pounds of muscle. It's that easy. What did we find in this study? Well, they had them do weight training with HIIT immediately afterwards for the what they wanted to study. Then they had a control group where they just did weight training first, and then they measured the results. Well, what did they find? Well, they found for muscle gains that it didn't significantly affect muscle gains. But here's what we're going to get to: statistical significance doesn't mean there was no difference. What they found was that the guys who just lifted weights and went home from the gym, right? They gained an average of a 13% increase in the size of their thigh muscles. 13% increase in the thickness of the muscle fibers, right? The guys who did HIIT afterwards gained 10% increase. 10%. Not a massive difference, but I guess it comes down to what are you trying to gain? I mean, you're talking about basically gaining 75% of your possible muscle gains versus 100% by comparison, because you did HIIT afterwards, because you did more work. And it's because of the timing of it. But what they noticed was most profound was the loss in rate of force production, meaning how much power they could produce with their legs was more dramatically affected. And the HIIT greatly reduced power production in their legs, or we call rate of force production. So what's going on here? Why did this happen? Because lots of people are able to do cardio and conditioning and be amazingly powerful, amazingly strong. How do they get away with it? Well, it's like I explained to you guys before. How does Alex Viada have his hybrid athletes do this? They separate their hypertrophy and peak power days in the gym on completely separate days. They don't even overlap energy systems. Call it concurrent style training. And then they do all their cardio in separate sessions. So what does that basically mean? What's going on there? Because they explain in the study what's going on. I'm going to put it into English terms. Cross-training two heavily different muscle fiber types and performance elements too close together in the same day causes interference with the adaptation. What I mean by interference, meaning you basically change some of the performance elements you would have adapted to from the first session, meaning the maximum power and strength that they would have gained in their legs from doing a bunch of heavy squats or leg presses, got a mixed signal sent to it by the body. Because afterwards they did a more endurance-oriented training, the body realized that the endurance came after the peak power, and therefore it probably wasn't as important to focus upon gaining the power or even gaining the hypertrophy as it was to focus more on gaining capillarization and endurance in the thighs, because that came afterwards, and that was clearly the more exhausting endeavor because it was done second. It was done afterwards. So what it did, it basically blunts the training effect. And what we find is that if you want to even maximize the benefits of different rep ranges, like if you want to do 3 to 5 reps for something like peak strength or peak power, and you want to go do 15 rep sets, 12 to 15 rep sets also, you usually find in studies that if you do them on completely separate days, you usually get better results in both areas than if you mix them in the same training session. So what happens when you do HIIT afterwards, HIIT is very much an endurance oriented. It's barely strength oriented. It's really like a max conditioning type training. So if you do it in the same training session, you blunt the effect of the other. So you don't gain the maximum strength and quite the maximum size from your squatting and leg pressing if you do the HIIT after. And I know to a lot of people are like, well, that sucks because I worked harder. It's like, yeah, it's not about the amount of work you do. It's about how smart you do it. And you're going to simply get better results if you separate them. You shouldn't be doing conditioning work immediately after weight training or strength work. And like I said, you shouldn't even be doing high rep leg work or high rep chest work immediately after doing really low stuff, because again, it will blunt the training response of the peak power that you try to train. It's the way the body will prioritize it. You mix the signals and you cause problems with muscle fiber intermediate types transferring. So that's always been the concern of why people said in the past not to do cardio at all, slow cardio if you were going to be a strength athlete, was because of that cross transfer of fibers. But what we found is kind of what I was explaining in the video, that you could run marathons and still be muscular and powerful. You just have to separate them out enough. It's when you do them too close together. So if you were to go weightlift and do any form of cardio immediately afterwards, it blunts the training effect. But is that always a bad thing? No, it's only a bad thing if you're saying I'm trying to get my max squat as high as possible. I'm trying to make my quads as big as possible. That's where it becomes a problem, because from a conditioning perspective, for someone who wants to lose fat, when's your metabolism probably at its highest? Right after you weightlift. So if a person were to go and do a pretty long bout of cardio, or even HIIT, or whether it's HIIT, list, whatever you're talking about, if you did it immediately after weight training, it might actually be a good thing for weight loss. I'm not saying it's the best approach, because it can be very exhausting and it's not ideal for everyone, but in some situations it might allow for the best caloric burn. Simply because, again, your body is in that post-workout recovery phase, or that epoch where your metabolism's a little bit higher. So accordingly, you might find it a lot easier to burn through body fat then, and particularly people who don't want to come in and do multiple sessions because they know they're not going to go train multiple times a day, but they want to burn through calories, they want to lose fat. Not a bad approach at all. Very effective approach. So again, it's really about, it's not saying that doing HIIT or lifts or anything else after you lift is always a bad thing. It's a matter of what are your goals. What are your current goals for this week, for this month, whatever it is you're trying to do, and you need to time those accordingly. But particularly useful for people, again, trying to burn through a lot of calories, want to lose some body fat, who don't want to do multiple training sessions per day. They don't want to separate them out. But people who are doing a HIIT cardio because they want extra cardiovascular conditioning, but they're trying to maximize strength and muscle mass, doing them in the same session like that, as you see here from the data, is a bad idea, but we've known that. Again, the results of this study were not really a surprise to me at all. I mean, they're exactly what you would expect. Noticeable loss in peak power, slight loss in muscle size. Again, exactly what you would expect. That's why, again, when you're trying to train in these different disciplines, it's a good idea to either change the days completely, or if you need to do them in the same day, ideally get some carbohydrates and a nap in between. It's kind of your ideal scenario. But again, not everyone's lifestyle really allows for an ideal scenario. So again, you have to weigh these individual factors out for yourself. It comes down to your lifestyle, your goals, your needs. But just remember, any cardio that you do immediately after lifting, basically in the same training session, is going to inhibit some of the training components and the adaptation components of the weight training. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.